Hi, my name is Kella. I'm 33 years old, living in Eugene, Oregon. I'm a writer and digital artist, and I have dissociative identity disorder, otherwise known as DID. So what is dissociative identity disorder? Well, to dissociate means to mentally disconnect from something. It's very normal to dissociate occasionally, like if you're zoning out and staring into space, and then something snaps you back to reality and you're not sure how long you were gone. That's totally normal. But when dissociation is consistently used as a coping mechanism to disconnect from emotions, memories of trauma, reality, you stop being able to control when you're dissociating, and you start disconnecting from positive things or things that are really important for you to be aware of, like signals that your body needs medical treatment. That's when dissociation becomes a disorder. Dissociative identity disorder means you are dissociating from part of yourself. I'm sure you know what it's like to have some kind of internal debate with yourself, like part of me wants to do X, but part of me really wants to do Y instead. But with DID, during childhood, you experience a trauma, and to cope with this really upsetting experience, you dissociate from who you are, and you create a new separate identity to handle those emotions and memories for you. So this traumatic thing didn't happen to me, it happened to that other version of myself. By relying on that other identity to hold all those emotions and memories, I am able to keep functioning in everyday life as if the trauma didn't happen. But that also means that when the part that holds the memories is conscious and controlling the body, which is called fronting, I have no memory of anything that happened while they were at the front. I may not know that these identities exist at all. These additional identities created by trauma are called altered states of consciousness, or alters for short. And this process of creating new identities is repeated whenever it's necessary. And once your brain learns to use this tool as a coping mechanism, it continues to split off new identities in response to stress even later in life. Switching between these different identities is very different from switching between moods or emotional states, which everyone does. Different alters can be as different from each other as two physical people are from one another. They can have different likes and dislikes, different styles, different speech patterns or accents, different sexualities, different genders. So you have this whole collection of different identities, all sharing the same brain and body, but each of them has different skills, different life goals, and different ideas about how to keep everyone safe. And they don't know that there are a bunch of other people that they're sharing a life with. Reducing the amnesia between alters and establishing communication and cooperation between them is a big focus in the process of treating DID. When we're talking about a collection of alters that belongs to a single person, we call that a system. So I am a member of my system. Every system is different in terms of how much amnesia they experience, how much communication there is within the system, or how many alters there are. My system currently has 30 alters in it, which is about average for my diagnosis category, and there are 6 to 8 of us who front on a regular basis. We used to have amnesia regularly in childhood, but it's pretty rare that we have it anymore. Now we have something called emotional amnesia, which is where you remember what happened, but you feel separated from it, like it didn't happen to you, and you may be missing some of the details. We were only diagnosed in August of 2020, but from the beginning we've had really good communication and cooperation within our system. We generally all know that we're on the same team and want to make a life that's good for all of us collectively. I think the biggest challenge we encounter socially is just that people don't know what DID is, or they think it's not a real thing. There's just not a quick way to explain DID, and because it involves childhood trauma, it's kind of a heavy thing to talk about, so it's hard to slip that into conversation when you're meeting someone for the first time. There are a lot of cultural misconceptions around DID. When someone has multiple personalities in a movie, they are scary, they are out of control, they have the dangerous alter who kills everyone, like in the movie Split. These are really terrible representations of what DID is actually like, because DID systems are not prone to violent outbursts, but they themselves are frequently victims of violence. Only about 6% of systems are open with the world about their diagnosis because the stigma they face is so significant. I have been very lucky because my community has been extremely supportive of us as a system, so we haven't experienced a lot of harassment directly. But all we have to do is read the comments on some YouTube videos about DID and we know how people feel about it. One of the most common misconceptions people have is that switching from one alter to another must be really obvious, that it's this big dramatic thing and you'd notice if someone was acting like a totally different person. But if you think about it, DID is formed as a survival tactic, and in most dangerous situations, it's not safe for potentially dangerous people to know that I have multiple identities. So the vast majority of systems are covert, like us. Many of us aren't obviously different until you get to know us, and everyone in our system is highly skilled at pretending to be me to conceal our differences. I'm what's called the host of my system, which means I'm the identity most people in the outside world meet. Previously, it was my job to handle everyday life stuff and not know about my system. People often misunderstand the purpose of a host and think of me as the main person or the real one, or they think treating DID means getting rid of the other identities, so it's just me left. I am one member of a larger team. Everyone on our team is linked together. Every single alter has needs and goals and contributes something important to the existence of the system. We are all real, and I am no more important than any of the others are. We try to make sure to celebrate and honor everyone. So, for example, we made this poster where everyone got to pick out their own sticker that represents them. And the center sticker is one we designed and says, "Together we survived." As much as I truly love my system, living with a pretty significant mental illness like DID does come with a lot of hard things. We are still learning how to regulate emotions in a healthy way instead of disconnecting from them. We frequently struggle to stop dissociating at times we really want to be present. For example, when we first went to pick up our newly adopted cat Rosa, we expected to feel excitement, happiness, warmth, connection, all these positive emotions to go with finally getting this thing we'd really, really wanted for a long time. But instead, we just felt out of our minds with anxiety and like the whole world was blurry. We couldn't access any of those positive emotions we expected to feel. But then a few days later, when we looked at a photo that the adoption agency took of us with Rosa, then all those warm and happy feelings started coming back to us. Those emotions had always been there, but they were compartmentalized because of the dissociation. A big part of treatment of DID is learning grounding techniques to combat the dissociation, which helps with learning how to come back to the present and connect to it. One of my favorite grounding techniques is I close the fingers of my hand one at a time and really concentrating on the tip of my pointer finger. And then I alternate between hands. I do the same thing with my toes and with moving my shoulders one at a time. That helps me get out of my head and back into my body. Having all these compartmentalized emotions and traumatic memories also means that when emotions happen, they're big, they're scary, they're unpredictable, and they can be really overwhelming. In post-traumatic stress disorder, when you get triggered, it means your brain is pulling you back into a traumatic memory. Brain scans actually show that at that moment, your brain behaves as if the danger you experienced then is happening right now. DID is basically a severe form of PTSD, so the same thing is happening, but there's an added layer to it. Triggers don't just bring up specific memories, they can bring a specific alter to the front, who may be the one who holds that traumatic memory. These alters may not have any everyday life skills. All they know is how to feel scared and sad. A lot of systems have alters of different ages, including children, so if I suddenly feel like I'm 8 years old, I can't do things like pay the bills or go grocery shopping. I'm just a little kid. I will be honest, we own a lot of stuffed animals for that reason. So sometimes we can start our day with a big list of things we're planning to do, and then at a moment's notice, we can't do any of it. We also get really anxious if we know we have to do something difficult, like go to a doctor's appointment or have a serious conversation, and there's a chance that someone will get triggered to the front who won't be able to handle it well. The main strategy we use for this is we have system meetings. So we'll start with a question like, who is up for going to this appointment? And we'll take turns writing in a journal to give our answer. Then we make a note of who said they could definitely do it, and 9 times out of 10, this ensures that one of those people will be fronting when it's time for the appointment. A huge challenge that we used to face is that for 13 years, we were going to therapy and did not know that we had DID. Most mental health professionals are not trained in how to diagnose or treat DID, so it can easily go undiagnosed for many years. Living with DID and not knowing is really disorienting. In the end, it was our own mental health research that led us to seek out a therapist who specialized in DID to test for dissociative disorders. Really, the only reason that this was accessible to us was, as a weird silver lining of the pandemic, remote therapy is much more common now, so we didn't have to drive 2 hours to the big city to talk to a therapist who was actually qualified to treat us. Even though we don't have full amnesia anymore, it's sort of like each alter has to consciously collect and hand off their memories to the others for the information to transfer, and sometimes there are glitches in that process. So, for example, one of our alters, Casey, went to our physical therapy appointment. He knew that we'd had a bad pain week and that the pain wasn't in one of our typical problem spots, but he could not remember where that pain was located. So, in our mind, Casey was going, "Can someone get me the file, please? Come on, I need the file." And externally, he was just stalling, waiting until that memory came forward, and then finally he could say the pain was in our neck. DID is a mental illness that people really struggle to imagine how there could be any positives, but the truth is, once you've established communication with members of your system, you never have to be alone. We can actually interact with each other in the internal world, which is basically a mental visualization of a space where all the alters can meet. And if one of my system mates gives me a hug, it feels like I'm getting a real hug from another person. Similarly, you know how if you're having a hard time, it feels really good for someone to just get you and say exactly all the things you need to hear? But we all know that that doesn't always happen the way you want it to. But when someone in my system comforts me, they can literally read my mind. They know everything about me. They know exactly the kind of validation or advice that I need. I get that internal insight, but the separation between us is enough that it feels like another person is offering it to me. They may even have insights about the situation that I don't have because they have different life experiences from me. Another benefit is creativity. I have never met a single DID system who was not incredibly creative. If you think about it, this makes perfect sense. We literally created new identities to protect ourselves from trauma. Our brains have a lot of capacity to create new things and to express ourselves in artistic ways. So we used to do a lot of singing and theater. Prior to the pandemic, we regularly DJ'd for social dances like Argentine tango. Our main work now revolves around writing and selling digital art. We just are always making something and always filled with new ideas of stuff we want to create. Every system is different in terms of how they want to be addressed or what terminology they use, so definitely always ask what their preferences are. But for us, we really love it when we hang out with someone for them to ask who's fronting today. It also really means a lot when people express interest in getting to know lots of members of the system rather than just wanting to talk to me. We like it when people refer to us as you all because we know they are really thinking of us as a group of people rather than just one. Some good rules of thumb that will probably apply to most systems. If you're not sure how to introduce me, like what name to use, just let me introduce myself. Then I get to decide if I want to be open about my diagnosis with this new person or not. Don't pry about someone's trauma. Knowing that I have DID means knowing that I had a traumatic childhood. But if I want to share that with you, let me decide when and how that happens. Be respectful of boundaries, especially around triggers. Like, try not to ask why I can't do something, and just respect that if I say I can't, then I can't. And for us in particular, don't be afraid to ask questions. If they are in good faith and you genuinely want to understand, we love talking with people about how DID works and what our experience is. Something that we really lacked prior to diagnosis was the understanding that it was possible to live a happy, successful life with DID. Our life isn't all sunshine and rainbows. I'm also physically disabled and have several chronic illnesses, so I'm not able to work full-time. But we have accomplished a lot of amazing things anyways. In 2016, we launched a blog called Yop, which is now a resource hub for educational material on social justice. We've published hundreds of articles, get thousands of views per month, and we've had over a dozen guest writers published on it too. Pre-pandemic, we organized a weekly tango dancing event that attracted internationally known musicians to play live. And at the end of October, we'll be self-publishing a book of poetry we wrote, which we also handled all the formatting for and illustrated and designed the cover. We have an amazing romantic partner who we've been with since 2010. We have an awesome community of friends who support us. We have an incredible emotional support animal, Rosa, our cat, who is with us basically 24/7. And we are so, so grateful that we have the freedom to be open as a system so everyone can express themselves authentically. If you want to learn more about DID, there are a lot of great YouTube channels. The CTAD clinic is geared toward therapists, but they have a lot of accessible information too. The Entropy System, Multiplicity and Me, and the Ring System are all channels run by DID systems. And you can also read more about my experiences with DID on my blog, Yopp, Y-O-P-P, voice.com. So thank you so much. I hope this was helpful. Much love to all of you and have a good day. Bye. Try not not to ask why I can't do something, and just respect that if I say I can't, I knew that would happen. It's kitty time. It's kitty time. Kitty wants the camera. Yup. Such a good girl. Such a good girl. Just scratches. Mwah. Is that your computer? Yeah? Whoop. Hello. Get your butt. Get your butt. Get your butt off.